Again, I'm just going to start off. We're going to get rolling here in a second. So I'll do the beginning intro things. I'm Robby T, based out of good old Fargo, North Dakota. And it's really weird, y'all. I don't know how much y'all care about weather. But we have almost no snow here. It's like half an inch of snow. And my friends, like people in Nashville, have inches of snow. Weird, super weird. It has been cold, so I'm excited to share some of that coldness with you guys. Anyways, we're hitting on the top 10 questions we need to be asking every single lead. To give everybody a little background, if you don't know who I am, I started in this game 10 years ago as an ISA. So my whole job was to call PPC leads, Zillow leads, have not met leads, expire leads, canceled. Basically, you name somebody that didn't know who we were. My job was to call them, have a conversation, and try to really set up my agents with appointments. Since then, I have transitioned, gosh, 7 years ago now, out of production day to day, making the calls myself, and I've been coaching and training many of the top ISA teams in the country. So a lot of the things that I teach about today aren't just my experience. It's some of the best in the industry that have taken this and ran with it and frankly evolved it. My whole goal today is to really kind of impart the top 10 questions that I think you need to be asking in almost every single conversation. And some of them are going to be pretty obvious. Some are going to provide, maybe need a little more clarity. Let's see here. So again, any questions that you guys have, if you do want a copy of these top 10 questions, at the end of today's webinar, we'll make sure to send them out to you. You'll have to just give us your email, all that fun stuff. If you have any questions throughout the next 40-ish minutes, go ahead and just type it in the chat there and we'll get them answered for you. All right, so top 10 questions. Let's first start here, y'all. I got to start with the North Star. 2 North Stars that matter above all else. I would make sure to write these things down. Number one, above all else, the number one thing that we consistently have to be doing is we have to put the other person's truth at the center of our conversations. The truth, their needs, their wants, desires are frankly all that matters. Your desire to make more sales, your goal to set more appointments, your hopes to sell more homes and make more money. None of those things matter in every single conversation. It has to be put to the wayside. I always talk about how you need to use those things as the motivation to pick up the phone and make the phone calls and shoot the text messages. But the moment you get in contact with the lead, none of those things matter. If anything, it actually becomes a conflict of interest because the moment your desires come out, it becomes potentially in conflict with what they're hoping to do. So the very first North Star is we have to put them at the very center of everything we're having a conversation about. In other words, these conversations are not about you. These conversations are not about your stats. They're not about your accolades. They're not about your presence. They're not about you hijacking the conversation, talking about your kids and how you love the same sports teams. None of those things matter. And what's really funny, y'all, is a lot of people act like that's how you build rapport, is you end up hijacking the conversations and talking about yourself. None of that matters. None of it. I'm going to teach you how you actually build rapport with people, and it's going to go against a lot of the common wisdom that you've been taught, because a lot of it's just frankly silly. So the first truth, y'all, again, is we have to put their needs, wants, and desires at the absolute center of the conversation. The second big thing that really matters here is to tie it all together is it's not about you. So we're seeking out their truth and it's not about you. So let's dive in. Let's talk about the top 10 questions. Question number one, and I'm going to go very slowly with each of these so you can write these down. If you're taking some notes, I'm going to go slow, say it, and then I'll circle back and provide some context. So question number one is simply, were you just kind of curious? Or are you thinking about making a move sometime soon? Were you just kind of curious? Or are you thinking about potentially making a move sometime soon? I'm going to slow that down even further. So the very first time I call a lead, when I reach out, I almost always go like this. I always say, hey, is George available? So technically, I guess you could say the first question is blank available, or George, or Phil, whatever the name is, doesn't really matter. Barry, all those different things. So I'm gonna say, hey, is Robby available? And I've heard some people say like you shouldn't do that because people can lie to you. First off, y'all, that's just silly because they could lie to you about anything. And then secondly, of course, the other silly part is if they wanted to end the conversation at any point, there's this big red button they can press. They can pull the parachute anytime. So the first question I'm asking is, hey, is this Robby? And then when they say, yeah, it is, then what I say is, hey, I was just reaching out because I saw that you were checking out some homes on one of our websites. So I want you to write this down. The structure here is I ask their name. Then what I do is I reference the behavior. So I saw that you were looking at some homes on one of our websites, or I got your inquiry through Zillow, or I saw that you were checking the value of your home on one of our websites. Really what we're inserting here is their behavior. A little note on this is if it's kind of like creepy type things, like if you know they looked at a house 5 times, I wouldn't say that unless they had inquired about that property. So if it's stuff that they haven't inquired about, I would not bring it up. But if I did see that they're looking at a house 5 times, I'm just going to say, hey, I saw that you were checking out a bunch of homes on one of our websites, or checking out some homes. I'm going to use a more generic term. The reason for that is if you get too specific in their behavior online, what I found is they get a little, creeped out. It's a little cringe, I guess you could say, as my daughter would point out. So 1, is this Robby? Saw that you were checking out some homes on one of our websites, and then were you just kind of looking for fun, or are you thinking about making a move sometime soon? To tie that all together, the biggest reason we ask in that order is, were you just kind of looking for fun, or are you thinking about making a move sometime soon? I've seen, when I share this, I've seen people reverse it. And what they accidentally do is they'll say, hey, is Robby available? They say yes. They say, I saw you were looking at some homes on one of our websites. Were you thinking about making a move, or were you just kind of curious? They flip, just curious. And are you looking to make a move? It's extremely problematic because what I've noticed is human beings have a short memory, and almost always they answer in the frame of whatever the last words that you said were. So what I've seen happen is when we ask and we say, hey, were you just looking for fun, anything about making a move? They're a heck of a lot more likely to answer. I got to move my mic over here. They're a heck of a lot more likely to answer in the frame of thinking about making a move. If we say, were you just kind of looking, or are you thinking about making a move, or are you just looking for fun? Lo and behold, almost everybody starts saying, I just look for fun. So super, super, super important that you use the framework. And I'm going to go through it one more time quickly. I always start, hey, is Robby available? Then when they respond, hey, I saw that you're checking out some homes on one of our websites. Are you just kind of looking for fun, or are you thinking about making a move sometime soon? 2 more big notes here. And please, I know this is a lot, but especially with the first question, pay very close attention to this. One of the biggest reasons I ask, hey, is this Robby? Is first, somebody's name is the sweetest word in the vocabulary. To go back to how to make friends and influence people by Dale Carnegie back in the day. He literally talks about how somebody's name is the sweetest word in their vocabulary. So that's the first thing. But secondly, and most importantly, I can learn a lot of information by how somebody responds to that question of, hey, is this Robby? Let me explain. When I'm talking to somebody that's maybe a more high D, they're more direct, they're more to the point, and they speak quicker, their response is typically going to be shorter and more to the point. Yeah, it is. Right? Whereas if I'm speaking to a high I, they're going to be a little more jovial. Hey, yeah, this is. Who's this? Higher I. The reason this is really, really important is mirroring and matching is everything. We're not going to talk too much about that today. That's a whole nother webinar topic. But I'm going to start mirroring and matching from how they respond to that question. If they answer with a lot of volume in their voice, and they're loud and they're direct to the point, I have to be more direct in the questions and how I ask it. So the biggest reason I'm asking, hey, is this Robby, is really to set a barometer, to kind of get a feel for who are they? How are they responding to the world? How are they communicating to me? That way, before I go into the, hey, I saw that you were checking out some homes on one of our websites, where you're just kind of looking for fun or you think about making a move, I can adapt that to how they responded. If they're a high D, I might cut out the, hey, I saw that you were checking out some homes. I'm going to simply say, hey, saw you on our website. Want to see if you're thinking about making a move soon. Boom, straight to the point, high D version. If they're Eeyore, when they respond like this. I'm going to slow down and say, I saw that you were just, checking out some homes on our website. I'm literally going to slow down to their pace. In other words, when I'm asking, hey, is this Robby? The whole point is to set that barometer, and then I'm going to adjust myself to it. You're never going to mirror match completely, but if I'm naturally a 4 or 5 and they're at an 8, I'm going to move up to a 5 or a 6 to close that gap. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. The second big thing that I wanted to hit on here real quick, last piece of clarity before we get into the next questions, is when somebody is feeling like they have to say yes to something, they're a lot less likely to give you accurate information. What I mean by this is, by us giving somebody permission to tell us no, they're a hell of a lot more likely to actually give us their truth. What we've found, and this comes back to Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, is that when people feel cornered, they feel afraid. When people feel afraid, they don't give you authentic answers. They throw up walls. Our whole job in these conversations is frankly to make people feel safe, because if people don't feel safe, they don't share accurate information. They don't share accurate information, truthful information. It violates tenet number 1 that we talked about, which is we have to learn people's truth. We have to make people feel safe. And one of the easiest ways to disarm people is to literally give them an option to tell you no, to give you bad news. Now, I'm not saying that you just give up if somebody says, I'm just looking for fun. Good God, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm absolutely willing and open to them telling me they're not interested. Now, just to be very clear real quick, if somebody does say they're not interested, people always ask, well, what do you do? Well, I just turn it into a question. Okay, well, if you're just kind of looking for fun, what maybe had you looking at real estate to begin with? I will turn their no into another motivation themed question, something like, why were you looking in the first place? If this is clicking, I want y'all to just pause for a second. We're about to transition to the next question. So that's all number 1. Like I call that number 1. I know it's a lot in it. It's really kind of 2 questions, but I call it number 1. And I call it number 1 because it's all in conjunction with each other. And all questions 2 through 10 should not be asked in order. Question number 1 always comes first. 2 through 10 can be asked, out of sync, out of order. If anything, it shouldn't be asked 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because the authenticity disappears. But if number 1 is making sense, I want you to just do something real quick for me to make sure you're engaged. I want you to type a 1 in the chat. Type a 1 in the chat for me. If that's clicking, if that's making sense. Not seeing any 1s in the chat. Okay, got 1, I think. There we go. Someone in the Q&A. That works. That works. That's perfect. All right, got 1. I'm just making sure that y'all can hear me. Let's be real. All right, let's move on to number 2. So question number 1 was everything we discussed. We're just looking for fun or thinking about making a move sometime soon. Number 2, who is all impacted by your move? Who is all impacted by this move? I love asking this question because what it does is it brings up and gets them to bring up the people that are typically closest to them, their spouse, their kids. Sometimes people name their pets or their horses. Sometimes they bring up their parents. Sometimes they bring up their sister who's heartbroken that they're moving out of town, whatever the story may be. I always like to ask the question, who is impacted by this move? I like to kind of name real quick that this is what I call a chess type question. What I mean by that is I'm asking the question not just to find out who their spouse is or who their kids are, who's impacted by the move, but it oftentimes sets up other questions. A really good example of this, if I ask somebody, if I'm speaking to a gal or I'll say a guy named Eric, I say, Eric, Help me understand who's all impacted by this move. And he sits down and he's like, well, my wife, of course, and my kids. Now I can ask follow-up questions like, okay, by the way, what's your wife's name? That's normal. Or, okay, cool. You said kids. How many kids do you have? This helps us prevent what I call left fielding. I want everybody to write this down. Left fielding. Far too often in real estate, what I see real estate professionals do, trying to build rapport, is we ask left field questions. We literally pull out of nowhere. You have any kids? Or what's your wife's name? Or are you married? Or what do you do on the weekends? And it's really, really, really weird, frankly. What's great about asking and utilizing who's all impacted by this move is you're using the frame of the move as the instigator to learn about the people. And that's what I've learned, y'all, is people actually think it's pretty normal because they were looking at homes on your website to have a real estate conversation. Well, I'm not just going to talk about the house. I want to learn about them and their story and their background. But if I just ask that out of the blue, it's super odd. It's awkward. If I instead find ways to get them talking about the people impacted by the move, now we're talking about their family, their spouse. Next big thing I want to hit on this is when they bring up someone like their spouse, one of the things that I've learned is I will ask questions about their spouse. Things like, well, what does your spouse want in your next home? I will now mentally note, I can't just ask for Eric's opinion. I need to also ask for his wife's, Emily's, opinion. So I'll ask Eric, if Emily were on the phone with us, what would she say? You see how this helps us get more accurate information and frankly gets Eric out of his own head and more into his holistic picture of what does his wife want. And let's be real, it's not usually just Eric's opinion that matters. So question number 2 is, who is all impacted by this move? Big thing here, if you want to write it, is who? Who? Number 3, there's actually 2 questions here, and I will read both of them for you quick. Number 3 is, what are a few must-haves in your next home? What are a few must-haves in your next home? And then I guess you get to call it, that was 3A. If you want to write down 3B, what are a few must-avoids in your next home? What are your must-avoids? It's really funny because I found that oftentimes when you ask people like, what do you want to avoid? They actually end up thinking of the things they want, but I digress. Here's what I really like about this part of the conversation is it really gets them speaking about the basics of what are some of the things that they really want in their next home. It gets them talking about the things they need. Maybe it's an extra bedroom. Maybe it's an open floor plan. It gets them talking about their must-haves in the next home. Key thing here for number 3 is what. So number 2 is who. Number 3 is what. If you guys are familiar with the Socratic method, you probably know what number 4 is, which is, when would you want to be all moved into your next home? Ideally, when do you want to be all moved into your next home? Now, I always ask some follow-up questions to this one, by the way. I ask some clarity questions. What I found is if I ask, hey, when do you want to make a move, or when do you want to be all moved into your next home, people can take that question in a lot of different ways. So I always, when they answer, I always clarify and say, okay, so you're saying June, just to make sure I'm understanding clearly. When you're saying June, does that mean you want to be all done with the process in June, meaning you're done, moved in, done with it? Or do you want to start the process in June? As we all know in real estate, that's a 3-month swing. If somebody wants to start the process in June, they probably won't be done until August sometime. If you want to be done with the process in June, you really got to start about 2-3 months beforehand at least, because that's how real estate works. So what I love asking is, ideally, when would you like to be all moved into your next home? So when? Number 5, do you have an ideal location in mind? Do you have an ideal location in mind? Or ideally, where do you want this next home to be? Ideally, what neighborhood do you want to be in? Again, where? So we got who, what, when, where. So where do you want this place to be? Now, a couple things to note. Remember how I talked about playing chess? This is one of those questions where I'm playing chess. And here's why. When I ask somebody, where do you want this home to be? It's not just me learning, hey, they want to be in Rose Creek that matters. I think really what's powerful is asking a follow-up question like, okay, cool. By the way, why Rose Creek? What's appealing about Rose Creek? And almost always what I found is that when you ask about ideal location in real estate, if you ask for clarity on why that location, I found usually three main reasons. I'd write these down. Three big things almost every single time. Number one is work. It is close to my work. It's conveniently located close to my wife and I's work, whatever it may be. Number two is school district / family or friends. It's close to the people they care about, or it's in a school district. So family / friends. And again, if you want to talk about how do we get people to bring up the personal information that we want to talk about, I'm not going to ask, hey, do you got kids in school? No. I'm going to ask, where do you want the home to be? And then I'll say, what's appealing about the neighborhood? And then they tell me, well, it's in our kids' current school district. Oh, great. By the way, you said kids. Tell me about that. Completely normal. What's completely weird is me saying, hey, what do you want in your next home? By the way, do you have kids? Weird. Not cool. Weird. Gives people the creeps. So it's playing chess. And then number three, the third big reason somebody wants a home in a certain neighborhood is recreation. Maybe it's on a lake and they like to go fishing, or maybe it is has a backyard to a football field and they're always in the backyard playing football. Whatever the story may be, there is usually some recreation piece when it comes to ideal location of mine. So let's just recap. The first question, of course, is just getting them to open up, and it's like, hey, are you motivated or not? Then we're asking who, then what, then where. Right, we got through all these. Now let's get into the next one. Number 6. These two questions really get us diving into the why. So again, who, what, when, where, and why. Number 6. First question I asked to really start finding out why is, well, tell me a little bit about your current living situation. Tell me a little bit about your current living situation. I love this one because it oftentimes gets them to tell you whether they're renting, whether they own a home, whether they hate their current neighborhood, whatever it may be. Tell me a little bit about your current living situation. Subsequently, number 6 is, well, help me understand what is the biggest thing you want to change about your current living situation. What is the biggest thing you'd want to change about your current living situation? I always talk about how when we're talking to people, what it really comes down to is we can find out the who, the what, the when, the where, all these great things. But without finding out why, we're flying blind. And really the why is almost always, what are they running from, right? What are they running from, or what are they running towards, and why? What is the pain they're running from, or the gain they're pursuing? What is the pain that they're running from, or the gain that they're pursuing? And my whole goal is to find out why. You finding out somebody needs more bedrooms and they need more square footage is not finding out why. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to go into questions number 8, 9, and 10 that we'll get to in a minute, really talk about how do we find out more about the why. But the foundation of finding out why is I want to find out a little bit about your current living situation and what you would change about it. Number 7. This is kind of a digression. We digress here a little bit. We kind of go offhand, but I think it's a really important question to be asking. And then we're going to circle back to really 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a second. Number 7 is tell me about your ideal agent. Tell me about your ideal agent. Tell me about how you want your agent to treat you. tell me about your expectations of an agent. Really, the whole point of this question is to start talking about what do they expect of you if they're your agent or of an agent. I think this is so key because almost all frustrations in business stem from missed expectations. Almost all frustrations stem from missed expectations. I thought you were going to do this. You didn't do it. I'm frustrated. Heck, did that sound like a lot of our marriages, right? Relationships, human dynamics 101. Missed expectations are the root of almost all frustration. And what this does, I think, is it gets you to start the conversation about what are the things they're expecting of you. And I think this does one of two things. One, you either learn, I need to show up as this person to properly check the boxes for this client. That's really valuable. With that being said, there are times, which is number two, there are times when you will not be able to meet somebody's expectation because maybe their expectation is psychotic. It's crazy, unrealistic. I think you are far better off addressing that right then and there, right up front, before you go and work for a month and then they get frustrated and fire you out of the blue. Because I would much rather directly name, hey, there's going to be times where I'm not going to be able to meet that expectation. A really good example. Well, I want an agent who's going to be able to drop everything at the drop of a hat. Hey, I really appreciate that. I just want you to know that most times I'm able to do that, but from 5 to 7, I'm with my family, and my kids have soccer Saturday morning. So during those times, I can't get back to you right away. It's just going to take a little more time. I hope you can understand that. If you simply handle that expectation right then and there, I almost guarantee you can handle it without it being frustrating. If you don't talk about this, what happens is you have a client, they reach out on Friday between 5 and 7, you don't respond, they get pissed off because you never told them what to expect. So what I love about the, hey, tell me about your ideal agent conversation is it really gets you talking about expectations. And the reality is this, is that if you really want to run a great business, I think it's pretty simple. What we need to do is we need to under promise and over deliver. What we do during this is we learn their expectation. It doesn't mean that we tell them, hey, we're going to do all this, we're going to do all this, we're going to do all this. If anything, you might be anchoring yourself to an unrealistic expectation. Rather, I might just hear them out, hear what matters to them. And I will tell you, y'all, humans have some really unique expectations sometimes. Sometimes they're like, I never want you to call me. I'm one of those. I don't know about you guys. I'm like, don't call me. Ever. Don't, please. Text me. If you want to get a hold of me, text me. And if we need to talk on the phone, text me and say, call me. That's just how I roll. That's me. Some people are like, never text me, only call me. When you ask these types of questions, start talking about expectations, it helps you treat them the way they want to be treated. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're learning in business and the way to treat humans in the game of influence is there was the old rule of the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. And if there's anything that's really revolutionary recently, it's don't treat others the way you want to be treated. Treat them how they want to be treated. And what we're doing here is we're essentially asking them, how do you want to be treated? Yet far too often I see agents that don't ask this question. It gets left off the list. We don't want to do it. It's really awkward at first. I'm not going to lie. Like it's weird to ask, hey, how do you want to be treated? Or what do you expect of an agent? Almost always at first, they've never really thought about it. And at first there's like silence. But if you just learn to shut up and if they say, well, I can't think of anything, and you're like, well, yeah, you know, maybe what are a few things that you'd really care about? Almost guarantee you followed up and ask another question, they will give you a mouthful of the things that they really want. So talking about expectations is key. All right, let's move on to number 8, 9, and 10. These are probably the most important. Everything that I just taught you, if you want to be good, like if you want to be decent at this stuff, you want to be decent at finding out people's truth, do 1 through 7. Guarantee you're going to get better. I hope that by hearing some of those, like, man, I need to ask this question, or and I need to be asking those 2 questions. And again, don't ask them in order. For the love of God, don't do that. It ruins it. But if you want to be good at this, just good, ask those 7 questions. If you want to be great, move into number 8. Number 8, write it down. Tell me more. Tell me more is less of a question. It's more of a mindset. And really what it means is when somebody gives you an answer, we're going to give them direct permission to tell you more about it. So if somebody says, well, I'm thinking about making a move sometime this year, I'm literally going to follow it up with, okay, super cool. Well, tell me a little bit about that. Tell me more has one simple aspect to it, maybe two. One is you reference their question. So you literally turn their, or you reference their answer, I should say, not their question. You turn their answer into a question. And secondly, you turn it into an open-ended question. Got it. So you want more space. Tell me about that. Here's different ways that I could just spitball, ask and tell me more. Number 1 is tell me more. Number 2, help me understand that a little bit better. Number 3, could you clarify that for me? Number 4, when you say X, tell me what you mean. Number 5, say more. Number 6, silence. Shut up. People will talk. Just literally be quiet. The point here is we're literally giving people space to expand upon what they've originally told you. Now, what's really fascinating is I just got done reading a book. It's called How to Listen. Don't need to go read the whole thing if you don't want to, if you're not a total geek on this stuff like me. But I read something super fascinating, which is that humans think in terms of words or pictures. Everybody should write this down, maybe. I think it'd be valuable for you all. We think of either words or pictures. So for those that think in words, it's like this internal voice. There's literally thoughts and words that come to our mind that we end up speaking or saying or just processing. That's just how our minds work. And then there's another whole group of people that think in terms of pictures. And usually when I ask this, it's like 70% think in words, 30% think in terms of pictures. And as I'm going through this, you guys probably start, raising your hand, and you could tell me who is who. By the way, I've noticed that the people that think in terms of pictures think that the people that think in words are crazy, and the people that think in terms of words with an internal voice think that people think in terms of pictures are crazy. It's just different. Our brains are wired differently. But here's the point. Our brain, when people go and analyze how rapidly it processes and thinks with information, if we're asked a question, our brain starts thinking. If you're a words person, a words person, our brain thinks in terms of about 700 to 900 words per minute. I'd write this down. 700 to 900 words per minute. For my friends that think in terms of pictures, you literally just cycle through pictures. And as we all know, pictures are worth many thousands of words. In other words, humans are thinking in terms of thousands of words likely per minute. Here's where tell me more becomes super, super, super critical. The reason it's so dang important is this, is humans can only speak, even the quickest speakers, at about 200-ish words per minute. So when I'm speaking very quickly and I go very, very fast, I'm speaking about 200 words per minute. So even if I'm speaking as quickly as my brain can think of the information that's trying to come to my lips, the problem is I'm actually only thinking, or speaking, I should say, of about 20-ish% of the information that's living in my head. Everybody needs to write this down. The reason Tell Me More is so gall dang valuable is that humans are only able to communicate a fraction, about 1/5 of the things that they're thinking. You see, the brilliance of Tell Me More is you're literally giving them the space to go and share the other 4/5 that they didn't get around to yet. That's the brilliance of Tell Me More, y'all, is it's rooted in the gap between what we can communicate and what we're thinking. What I've found when it comes to real estate conversations, what I've found the biggest problem to be is the gap between what we think we're hearing and what somebody's actually saying and thinking. And tell me more is the first dang tool to learn more in-depth information about what they're actually saying or thinking. I call this creating clarity. The brilliance of Tell Me More is it helps them share, it gives them space, it gives them permission to bring up the other 80% of the things that they simply couldn't say when they were first speaking. I hope you're seeing the freaking importance of this. Whether you're talking to a spouse, a child, a lead, a client, a team member, somebody you're leading, Tell Me More is brilliant because it allows people to share the other thoughts that they didn't have the capability to share in the first place because we simply cannot speak as much as we think. Number 9. What else? What else? This ties together with Tell Me More, but it's like getting your master's degree. If you want to become excellent at this game of learning what people are saying, understanding truth, what you do is you ask what else. And what I mean by that is if I ask somebody a question like, hey, what are a few must-haves in your home? And they say, well, I want to get an open floor plan between my kitchen and the living room. I say, oh, cool. Tell me more about all that. You guys see how I'm literally taking what I'm teaching you and putting into real world practice there. So what are some must-haves? They say, well, we need a bigger house. I say, cool. Well, tell me more about that. What's that look like? And then they expand upon it. They tell me about the kitchen. They tell me about the living room. I know that they want this, this, and this. They want the pantry. And they keep telling me all about it. What a brilliant person does is they then say, all right, got it. So Eric, what I'm understanding is you want that open floor plan that is flowing from your kitchen to your living room. It's got to have a lot of light, white cabinets, all that fun stuff. That's what I'm hearing is some of your must-haves. What are some other big things that are in your must-haves list? You see, it's circling back. Just think of this. Just chew on this for 1 second. When I asked someone, or if you ask someone, hey, what are some must-haves? Do you think that their brain only thought of one answer that they told you? No! They're leaving off the other third, fourth, fifth thing that actually might be more important. It just maybe didn't come to their mind first and they didn't start speaking about it first. But they're leaving that off. You see, the reason I love what else is it's essentially asking the same question again. And then you find out maybe they really want a fenced backyard. Okay, tell me about that. What do you want that backyard to look like? Well, we need a fence yard. I want to be able to throw the kids back there. We want a jungle gym would be great, blah, 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 whatever the heck they say. Get it all. All right, got it. So open floor plan, fenced backyard. Ask it again. Is there anything else that's really important to you in this next home? You see how what this does is it moves us from learning like surface level information to learning deep, in-depth, motivating, this is what I want information. This is how you win, y'all, is you learn better information than your competition. And what's interesting is the more information you learn, the more trust is built, the more they're trusting you. And frankly, the better equipped you are to actually help them. Notice that we haven't even spoke or said anything yet about setting an appointment. This is all just us in information gathering mode. So to tie this together, number 8, right, was tell me more. Number 9, what else? What we're doing with both those questions is we're trying to create a heck of a lot more clarity about what somebody is actually saying. We're trying to understand what is it, what are the things that they're actually wanting. Number 10. I talked about how if you wanted to be good, if you want to be great, if you want to be excellent, if you want to be the best, you got to move into number 10. Number 10 is what I call a challenge question. And a challenge question is you you're not telling them something they should do. Rather, a challenge question is you presenting an alternative to what they're saying to see if they would consider it. Let me explain. Let's say I ask somebody, hey, ideally, when do you want to be able to move to your next home? And they say, well, I want to move in June. Okay, when you're saying you want to move in June, does that mean you want to be done with the process or start the process? I want to be done with the process. Okay, great. So you want to be completely done with the process in June, which means you'd probably for sure have to start in at the latest May, probably more like April. Does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. All right, appreciate it. Good stuff there. I got to ask a question though. Let's say the perfect home for you got listed, I don't know, maybe in March or I don't know, February, or heck, maybe even the end of January. So let's just say February sometime. Perfect home got listed that checks all the boxes that you just told me about. Is that something that you consider maybe, potentially taking a peek at, or would you pass on that opportunity? The whole goal here, of course, is to present an alternative. In their mind, they're saying June, 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 June. I'm going to be done in June, which means I'm going to start the process. Let's just call it April. What I then am presenting is an alternative. Hey, what about maybe starting the process in late January, February, March? The whole point of this is simply seeing and identifying, would they consider that alternative? I'm not telling them, hey, you should buy right now, interest rates, blah, blah, blah. None of that salesy crap, date the rate, marry the house, none of that stuff. Rather, what I'm doing is I'm presenting an alternative to somebody. And what happens is one of two things, y'all. Either their answer breaks. They'll literally say, well, I guess I'd want to take a peek at it. And what I do is if I need to, I move that question up or backwards. Okay, so let's say if the house got listed tomorrow. Would you want to learn more about that house, or would you pass on it? You wanted to flip it, or would you pass on it, or would you want to learn more about that house? What that does is it breaks their answer sometimes. And they move from, oh gosh, I guess, yeah, I'd want to take a peek at it. And I don't know about you all, but if they say I want to take a peek at it, it means probably willing to do something right now. This is how you can turn a lot of like 1 year, 6 month people down the road, and you can turn them into, no, they would do something right now if the right home came along. And let's just be real, they were going to do that the whole time. They're just waiting for the right place and then might submit a Zillow inquiry, any of that fun stuff. The point here, though, is we're presenting a challenge, and it can break their answer. It can break their initial answer. Now you get a new one. Or number two, when you ask a challenge question, it either breaks it or it strengthens it. What I mean by that is they say, hell no, no chance. I'm so busy. I'm not even thinking about this till April. No chance. I don't even know if I want to think about it in April. Maybe not till May. All right, just to make sure I'm understanding, if that perfect house got listed, let's say middle of March, you're not even wanting to think about it. Help me understand that. Nope, no chance, don't want to do it. So they double down, they strengthen their argument. Not going to happen. So what we're doing when we're challenging things, and that was just with timeline, right? You can do it with the house. Hey, if this house had everything you wanted, but it didn't have a fenced backyard, would you consider taking a peek at it, or would you pass on that house? What we're doing with challenging questions is we're getting them to visualize scenarios that they maybe haven't thought of, which I don't know about you all, but that's coaching, right? Coaching is helping prepare people by visualizing scenarios that are probably going to come up. And you do that through asking a challenge type question. When you ask a challenge type question, it either breaks their argument or it strengthens it. Either way, huge win-win for you. All right, that's 1 through 10. I'm going to give you now, I told you that was a PhD. If you want to be the best of the best of the best at this, if you want to bring it to your ideal next level, the very last thing I got to teach you all today is if we know others are impacted by a move, we find ways to ask, hey, if your wife was on the phone with us, what are her must-haves? If your wife was on the phone with us, what are her must-avoids? The things that she absolutely doesn't want in the home. When it comes to your kids, what are some of the things that you really care about, your must-haves in your next home? In other words, what you're doing is instead of just getting the one person's opinion, which is usually just a small fraction of the mind of the decision-making here, what we do is we start asking, if your wife were here, if your wife were on the phone, or what are some things that your wife, and if you know their names, their name or husband, doesn't really matter. If Emily was on the phone with us today, what are some things that she cares about you? Is there any things that she doesn't agree with you on? Are there some things that she wants a lot more than you do? If you want to master everything we just talked about, if you want to go through it all, just to recap it, you start with the first question, just trying to find out, are they motivated or not? Should we keep talking to them or not? Really, 2 through 7 are about who, what, when, where, and why. 8, 9, and 10 are about clarifying everything that's happening in your conversation. And then if you really want to bring it to your next level, you don't just ask about Eric's opinion or Beth's opinion. You always ask about who are the others impacted and what are their opinions. What's fascinating, y'all, if you do all these things, what I've found is that your problem changes. Your problem changes from not having any clue how to motivate them and how to influence them to having too much information to influence them. It becomes it becomes easy. Because all you do, once you do all this, and again, we can do another webinar, or you've probably attended a few of mine, what you do is you just align next steps with their stated needs, wants, and desires. What I've done to help other people in a situation like you that needed to get the heck out of their current home and into their next home is have them swing by our office for a quick strategy session. The whole point is to create a game plan to get you out of that house and your next home as soon as possible. What we're doing is we're aligning, here's a solution to the plethora of problems that you've told me about. A final couple notes. You can't fake caring. I think above all else, you have to put somebody's needs, wants, and desires, that's why I started with it, above your own. And caring is the core component of, I want what's best for you. You can't fake it. You can't fake this stuff. You have to actually care. Can you align it? Can you find ways to win when they're winning? Absolutely. But if at any point there's a conflict where their needs might push against your own, theirs come first. And as long as you're willing to do that, and you take these questions and you take a deep interest in others, what I found is people begin to trust you. And when they trust you, it becomes easier for them to work with you. And because you have so much information about what they're hoping to do, it becomes a lot easier for you to deliver service that they need, want, or desire. So the whole point of these 10 questions is simple. It's really to give you more ammunition and information so you can better serve your clients, your clientele. What's really cool about this is you're putting them at the center. You're making them feel like they matter. You're making them feel like they're the most important person on earth. And because in this process, they are. Your opinions don't really matter. And I'll end on one final note. And it's something that I firmly believe in real estate that so many people mess up, which is you should never tell people what to do. I've honestly found people don't want to be told what to do unless they directly say they ask for it. Most times people don't want to be told what to do. Rather, we'd rather have somebody ask questions. And by doing so, we help them self-discover what they should go and do. Through all these questions, what we find is we really, I think, need to realize that some of the value that we're giving people is the space to just really congregate their thoughts and put things together of, oh, here's what I want to do. Here's what matters. And if you're anything like me, what you'll notice is humans are complex, especially when you take into account that there's kids, families, death, a lot of different things. And what happens is there's conflict. There's conflict between what a wife and a husband wants. And our job is to create the common ground of what are the things that we agree upon. And if you do this, your service becomes a 10 out of 10. If you do this, you have clients that become raving fans. If you do this, what happens is people can't help but share, hey, you got to work with Robby. Hey, you got to work with Eric. Hey, you got to work with Kyle, whoever it is. The whole point of these 10 questions, y'all, is to simply give you a framework for what are the questions you need to be asking every single conversation. And if you do this, you ask those 10 questions, I don't know, y'all. My opinion is this game gets easy. All right, so I'll let you guys ask some questions here real quick. Looks like we got some things in here. All right, I'm gonna go through the questions. Give me 1 second. Gotta do this really weird. Whoopsies, answer live, done. Yeah, chat was not working. All right, if you have any other questions you want to drop it in there. I'm gonna start answering them in a moment. Just getting down there. Yeah, chat is disabled. It's because sometimes chat goes crazy. Thank you all for letting me know. All right, somebody asked, I had to miss the start of this webinar and miss the first 5 questions. Absolutely. You will get the recording if you signed up for this. You're good to go there. Number 1 is, were you just looking for fun? Anything about making moves sometime soon? Number 2 is, who is all impacted by this move? Number 3 is, what are a few must-haves in your next home? What are a few must-avoids? Number 4 is, when would you want to be all moved in your next home? And number 5, do you have an ideal location in mind? So really, who, what, when, where, and why? Again, if you have any other questions you want to get answered today, type it in there. What is the name in the book that I mentioned? I think it was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Recording will be sent out probably later today, maybe early tomorrow morning. So feel free to share it. All that fun stuff. Let's see here. If you guys have any follow-up questions, let me know. She asked them their budget. Yeah, I think so. Great question, Georgia. Do you have, I like to do it a little more formally. Do you have a price range in mind is how I'd ask it. I don't like to say, what's your budget, but do you have a price range in mind? Also, you could totally ask about like, hey, have you had a chance to connect with a lender yet? As opposed to, are you pre-approved? A little more informal, I found to be really, really good. Book on Silence, How to Listen by Trimboli, Trmboli. How to Listen. Somebody asked me, what was the very last question that we covered today? Let me make sure to pull up my list so I don't mess it up. Oh, it's a challenge question. So that is simply something along the lines of, if the ideal opportunity came up tomorrow, let's say they were thinking they were going to wait for a year. So it's an alternative to what they're thinking. What do you take advantage, or what do you pass? What do you pass or take advantage? All right, y'all. I gotta get running here. Hopefully that was valuable. If you found some value in it, go share some good words. Appreciate you. Get out there, do good, share the love, treat people well, and for the love of God, y'all, ask more questions. Peace, y'all.